I am the most favored lover of the gang leader. We have been in love for 3 years, and I love him dearly, accompanying him through thick and thin. Everyone calls me sister-in-law, assuming I will be his wife. Until the day his first love was chased and he pushed me away, taking a bullet for that girl. He didn't know I was pregnant that day. I was hit in the stomach, resulting in a miscarriage and heavy bleeding. That cold-blooded man, for the first time, broke down. He knelt on the ground, holding me, begging me not to die. He said he loved me. But I don't love him. The man I truly love is a police officer. 5 years ago, on the day before our wedding. That man died by his gun. In the 3rd year of being Steven's lover, he said he wanted to marry me. When asked why, he said I was obedient, sensible, like his first love, Vivien. I have always known that in Steven's heart, I am just a stand-in. On every night he misses Vivien, he would pin me down and indulge in passion. In the most emotional moments, he would make me suffer while coaxing me, be good, cry for me. He said, my blushing face with teary eyes resembles that woman the most. It seems like his love has never truly been given to me. Friends console me, saying Steven never mentioned marriage when he was most in love with Vivien. But now, he wants to marry me. They say, Steven loves me, he just doesn't realize it. He will make me breakfast, coax me to wake up, and kiss my lips when I act coquettish. Everyone calls me sister-in-law, assuming I will be his wife. For a moment, I became the most glamorous woman in the entire North District. Until, before our wedding, Steven and Vivien reunited. That day, I found out I was pregnant. But Steven no longer wanted me. The day I met Vivien, she was entertaining clients at the club. I heard her father was addicted to gambling, losing all their wealth, and Vivien had to work tirelessly to pay off the debts. She entered our private room with a group of women, and when she saw Steven, she froze in place, then quickly lowered her head. Vivien probably didn't want Steven to recognize her, but someone pushed her, and she ended up sitting right next to Steven. Steven was smoking, eyes closed, leaning on me, cursing slowly, "Don't cling to me, whoever dares to upset my wife, I'll kill them." The women around sighed, as if envious of how loving Steven was towards me. Vivien clenched her fists, gripping her skirt tightly, silently glanced at me with envy and resentment. Suddenly, the woman next to her pulled her, shouting loudly, "Vivien, the bosses want to see a strip dance, you dance well, so go." Everyone fell silent at the mention of that name, Vivien. Steven suddenly opened his eyes, gripping my hand tightly, which hurt me a lot. Probably feeling embarrassed, Vivien was trembling all over, raising her hips to leave, but Steven stopped her with a firm hand, firmly pressing her back on the seat. At the next moment, Steven grabbed her by the throat, pulling her close, fiercely asking, "Vivien, did I not tell you, if I saw you again, I would kill you?" Everyone knew, Vivien was Steven's first love. They also knew how ugly their breakup was. The year Steven loved Vivien the most, Vivien, in a fit of anger, slept with another man. That year, Steven drank every day, leading to a bleeding stomach, almost dying. After that, he never mentioned Vivien again. Everyone thought he hated her. Someone jeered and humiliated Vivien, "Where's your man? Why can't he support you, making you come out to earn money to support him?" That was too harsh. I furrowed my brows, glaring at the person who immediately stopped laughing. I tugged at Steven's sleeve, advising him, "It's not easy for a girl to come out and work to support her family. Don't make things difficult for her, all right?" He glanced at me coldly, saying, "My business with her doesn't concern you." I hesitated for a moment and gently let go of his hand. Vivien chuckled slyly, and in her gaze towards me, there was a hint of scorn. She reached out to touch Steven's face, softly saying, "Steven, don't marry a woman you don't love just because you miss me, it would hurt me." Biting her lip, tears welled up in her eyes and fell heavily on the back of Steven's hand. "Steven, I've always wanted to tell you, the day you saw me in bed with another man, he drugged me." Steven furrowed his brows sharply, gently letting go of her hand, the previously insidious air nowhere to be seen. Vivien pounced into his arms, crying uncontrollably. Steven didn't push her away. In fact, Vivien's words were unverifiable. That man had long been tormented by Steven to the point of despair, and nobody knew where he was now. Nevertheless, Steven still felt sorry for her, not investigating the truth and simply forgiving Vivien. In front of everyone, he ruffled Vivien's hair, comforting her softly, "Don't cry, be good, I'll take you home." People whispered, Steven and Vivien made up, what about Joy? What else can she do? She's out, the moonlight has returned, the stand-in will surely have to leave. Steven heard it, but he didn't say anything. He used to dote on me, never allowing others to say a bad word about me. But now, he truly wanted the person he cared for to come back. He no longer cared about me. That evening, Stephen brought Vivien back to our home. I followed behind, and before entering, Vivien glanced at me. She held Stephen's hand and shook it, smiling. "Stephen, let Joy move out tomorrow. It's late today. It's not safe for a young girl to be outside alone." She was in a rush for me to leave. To Vivien Joy, the next moment, she pulled out a gun, pointing it at her head, calmly saying, "You have no say here." Vivien turned pale with fear, seeking help from Stephen. Stephen lit a cigarette, smiling at the corner of his mouth, reached out to lower my gun. He tousled my hair, lazily saying, "I taught you to use a gun for self-defense, not to act tough in front of me. Go home." He took Vivien inside, leaving me standing outside alone, like a discarded child that I should have turned and left. But I couldn't. I had to marry Stephen. I had to be obedient, sensible, shameless, and keep loving him. I stood at the door for a while, digesting all the emotions, then returned home by myself. Vivien was already in pajamas. Which was my gown, fitting her just right. She came over to apologize to me. "I'm sorry, Joy, I wasn't trying to make you leave just now. Stephen told me you saved his life, he's loyal, and so am I. So don't worry, from now on, you can stay here at ease, we'll treat you like a little sister, take care of you for a lifetime." She pointed to a room casually, saying, "You can stay in that room, consider this place your own home, no need to be reserved." I found it amusing, smiled, swept my eyes over her, and slapped her across the face coldly, cursing, "Who do you think you are, trying to arrange things for me?" I pushed Vivien away, walked straight to the master bedroom, slammed the door shut. In the middle of the night, Stephen pushed the door open. I looked at the moon outside, softly asking him, "So, coming to vent for Vivien?" Stephen didn't say a word, grabbed my collar, pulling me up. I glared fiercely at him, wanting to show him that I too had a temper. But he was amused by me, smiling softly, bending down to kiss my lips, softly saying, "I'm here to coax my wife." Tears instantly rolled down my face, and I bit his lips, breaking them. A sweet and bloody taste lingered between our lips and teeth. Stephen's kisses left me weak. In the most emotional moment, he whispered in my ear, soothingly, "Go apologize to Vivien, I don't like seeing her cry all the time, it's bad for the eyes. Joy, be a little obedient, don't make things difficult for me when I'm in a good mood." I smiled, remained silent for a moment, and softly said, "Okay." The news of Stephen asking me to apologize to Vivien quickly spread throughout the entire North District. He bought a flat for Vivien, keeping her outside. Everyone said he was soon going to discard me. I pretended not to hear, just trying hard to play the role of his obedient fiancé. Stephen and I were getting married in a month, and I counted down the days every day. Playing with my hair, Stephen softly asked, "Do you really want to marry me like this?" I hugged his neck, whispered in his ear, "It's my lifelong wish." He smiled, conjuring a diamond ring out of nowhere, putting it on my ring finger. Lazily saying, "Happy birthday, fiancé." Today was my birthday, but Stephen had things to attend to and couldn't accompany me. Yet the gift he gave me was enough to keep me happy for a long time. He booked the restaurant in the center of the lake and invited some friends to accompany me. When I arrived, I saw Vivien there too. She saw me, smiled, and approached me softly, asking, "Joy, you won't be upset that I'm here, will you? Last time, Stephen forced you to apologize to me, even though I said it wasn't necessary. He said he couldn't bear to see me being treated unfairly, and it's all his fault that you were upset. Actually, I quite like you, and I also want to be friends with you. Please don't hate me, okay?" I looked at her quietly, didn't say a word, just brushed the stray hair by my ear. The glittering diamond ring reflected the sun's light. Vivien froze in place, her eyes turning red, and softly asked, "Did Stephen give you the diamond ring?" I smiled and asked her back. "I'm his wife. If he doesn't give me a diamond ring, should he give it to you instead?" Everyone gathered around, discussing in a clamor, "Sister-in-law, that's great. For so many years, you have been with Stephen through thick and thin, he must have all this in his heart. I've seen this diamond ring at an auction, worth several million. Stephen is really pampering you. Sister-in-law, can you take off the ring so we can have a good look at it?" Vivien's face became more and more unpleasant. I was about to take off the ring to hand it over, but she suddenly pushed me. I fell to the ground, and the ring in my hand flung out, falling into the calm lake. The fall hurt a lot, and as I got up, my stomach suddenly twinged. Vivien pretended to be flustered. She cried while apologizing to me. I'm sorry, Joy, it was all my fault. Don't worry, I will tell Steven to buy a bigger diamond ring for me to compensate you. He has always been very generous to me, he buys me whatever I want. I looked at her coldly, calmly saying, it's not that complicated, you caused it, you should retrieve it yourself. I grabbed her hair and pushed her into the water. Vivien screamed for help, and the scene turned chaotic. Suddenly someone shouted, what are you doing in front of Steven? When they heard Steven's name, everyone stopped. He was holding roses in his arms, probably trying to surprise me. Vivien viciously pushed me aside and rushed into Steven's arms, crying, Steven, she threw away my necklace, she threw away the necklace my mother left me. Vivien's necklace, probably lost in the chaos, had accidentally fallen into the surrounding bushes. I clenched my fists, nails digging into the skin, enduring the pain in my stomach, and calmly said, I didn't touch her necklace, but she threw away our wedding rings in the lake. Steven, the ring you gave me is lost. I can't find it anymore. Before I could finish, Steven coldly interrupted, is a ring that important? I stood still, suddenly smiled, and asked him, Steven, is the wedding ring you gave me not important? He stared at me, saying word by word, Joy, Vivien's necklace is an heirloom from her mother. Rings can be bought again, can you buy an heirloom again? Steven threw the roses he intended to surprise me with into the trash can, and said in a low voice, Joy, what you lost, go find it. Someone spoke up for me, Steven, it seems like sister-in-law isn't feeling well. Vivien interrupted him, pretending to persuade Steven, it's okay, Steven, I know Joy hates me. As long as she can feel relieved, it's fine. Although she lost my mother's heirloom, I won't blame her. I will find it myself, don't hurt her feelings because of me. Steven ignored her, just looked at me with softer eyes and asked, where does it hurt? I forced a smile, shook my head saying it was nothing. I walked towards the grass soaked in lake water. The early autumn weather was really cold. At 2 a.m, I found Vivien's necklace and took it to her apartment. When the door opened, I saw Steven shirtless, with dewdrops on his tight muscles. Vivien, in cool pajamas, smiled and said, Steven and I just worked up a sweat, we just took a shower. Joy, please don't misunderstand, and don't be angry with Steven anymore, okay? He just doesn't want me to be upset, he's not intentionally making things difficult for you. Steven looked at me, his clothes soaking half wet, standing by the door, shivering from the cold wind. He frowned and walked towards me, pulling me into his arms to warm me up with his body heat. He scolded me, slightly annoyed, can't you say something sweet to me? Where's the smart and lively girl who usually acts cute and spoiled? I gently pushed him away, handing Vivien's necklace over. With the wet jade Buddha lying in my palm, I laughed a little self-mockingly, softly saying, I don't want to be cute to you anymore, Steven. Your heart is as hard as a stone, I can't warm it, and I don't want to. I know you care about Vivien, and won't see her cry. I found her necklace, go make her happy. Keep her here like a mistress, it's unfair to her. Please give me 2 days, Steven, I will quickly move out of your villa. I turned to leave, but Steven grabbed my wrist, his tone threateningly cold. He asked, not getting married anymore? I reddened around my eyes, holding back tears, smiled and said, you don't want to marry me, I don't want to marry you either, it's fine. I twisted my wrist to break free, but Steven's grip grew stronger, almost crushing my bones. In a moment of impatience, I bit his hand, seeing blood. Steven softly cursed, grabbed my neck, pressing me against the wall. Near my ear, he said menacingly, who said marrying me was her lifelong wish? Joy, are you talking nonsense? But what can I do? I believed it. Do you want to run now? It's too late. That night, Steven left Vivien and took me back to the villa. He pulled me into the bathroom, turned on the hot water, held my chin, kissing me fiercely, undressing me piece by piece. His kisses were intense and punishing, as if disciplining me yet comforting at the same time. I struggled, for the first time being stubborn, refusing to surrender to him. Finally, Steven got frustrated, almost exasperated, and whispered, calming me down, Joy, listen to me, nobody will take me away from you, not even Vivien. He said he pitied Vivien. He seemed to have really fallen in love with me. After that day, Steven cooled off towards Vivien. He came home on time every day, had meals with me, chatted, and walked together. We were just like an ordinary couple. Everyone said he had never been so patient with a woman before. Until before our wedding, Vivien said she was leaving. It was Steven's birthday, and I was planning to tell him that I was pregnant. Before I could say it, Vivien interrupted. Dragging her luggage to find Stephen, she softly said, "We promised to be together for a lifetime, but it seems like I can't be with you anymore." Joy resents me. As long as I'm here, she won't be happy. It will affect your relationship. I have to leave. Please thank Joy for me. I won't be by your side anymore. Please take care of you well. Stephen's expression gradually turned cold. Gritting his teeth, he asked Vivien, "Didn't we agree to treat each other as family? Will I support you?" Joy is well-behaved and understanding. She listens to me. Why do you have to leave? Vivien smiled. A tear rolled down her cheek. Choking with emotions, she questioned Stephen. "Stephen, can you really treat me only as a family member? We used to embrace, kiss, sleep together, that kind of sweetness. Can you really forget it?" She waited for Stephen to answer, but he remained silent, saying nothing. Vivien suddenly shouted, "I can't. I don't want to be just your family, Stephen. I still love you. How can I stay by your side and watch you marry and have children with other women? It's breaking my heart, don't you know?" Vivien revealed scars from self-harm on her wrist. She cried and screamed, "I have depression, Stephen. If you don't love me, I will die. But I know, you don't care about me anymore." She finished and turned to leave. Stephen, almost with no hesitation, pursued her. Outside, it was pouring rain. I stood by the window, calmly watching them entangled in the rain, slowly disappearing from my sight. Suddenly, I felt a strong sense of anxiety. I felt that if this time, Stephen followed Vivien and left, maybe he wouldn't marry me, he wouldn't want me. I needed to get Stephen back. I must have him back. I rushed into the heavy rain, frantically searching for Stephen. After running for what seemed like an eternity, I saw Vivien sitting in a corner hugging her arms, and Stephen squatting in front of her, holding her tenderly. Vivien cried, hitting him and questioning, "Stephen, if you don't love me anymore, why did you come to find me? Don't you know that if you come to find me, it will hurt Joy? Why? I was just a replacement for her, but took away everything from me. I have nothing left, Stephen. I have no mother, no you, no home. I have nothing left." Stephen let her cry, comforting her gently. "Be good, don't hurt yourself, calm down, I'm here. Vivien. I will always be with you, never leave you. If you want a home, I will give you a home. Everything Joy has, you will have too. I will give you more, better things, only to you, okay?" I stared blankly at the tender Stephen. Suddenly, I felt like he was so far away from me. I didn't know what to do to hold on to him and not let him go. Vivien hugged Stephen tightly, her gaze through his shoulder, landing on me. It seemed like she was smiling. I heard her ask Stephen, "You don't actually love Joy, do you? You're just trying to make me jealous, aren't you?" Stephen remained silent, and Vivien urged him, "Say it. You don't love Joy, do you? You love me, right? Stephen, if you don't make me happy, I won't go back with you. I will really leave, and you won't be able to find me again." Stephen sighed, smiled, and helplessly consoled her. "Yes, you're right. I love you, okay? Vivien, I still love you. Will you come home with me?" Vivien pouted, acting spoiled. "I don't believe you, unless you kiss me." She lightly closed her eyes, sweetly waiting, softly saying, "Stephen, kiss me." I almost lost my composure, shouting, "Stephen, no. We are getting married. Can you also share a little bit of your soft feelings for Vivien with me?" Stephen turned to look at me, hesitating. Vivien leaned on his chest and smirked triumphantly at me. She suddenly started crying again, pretending to be in distress, holding a small knife in her hand, pressed against her neck. She shouted, "Stephen, let her go, let Joy go. I don't want to see her anymore. If you don't want to lose me, you just let her go. Never show up again." Stephen nodded, looking back at me, and coldly said, "Vivien is emotionally unstable right now. I don't want her to be upset anymore. You, go." I trembled, holding back tears, and whispered, "Stephen, there's something I want to tell you. I'm pregnant." Stephen suddenly froze. Even Vivien was speechless, staring at me intently. I reached into my pocket for the pregnancy test report, about to show it to him, but then a gunshot rang out from somewhere. Vivien, terrified, buried herself in Stephen's arms, and Stephen held onto her tightly, leaving me alone, trembling in fear of the sound of gunfire. I've accompanied Steven through life and death many times, but he knew that I was most afraid of the sound of gunshots. That in the past, he would cover my ears and tease me for being a coward. But now, the person who used to protect me by covering my ears, holding another woman in his arms, no longer cared about me. Gunshots continued to echo, and I wanted to crouch on the ground, but felt a numbness and pain in my stomach. A large amount of blood stained my white nightgown. Steven called my name, Joy. His voice was in chaos. He caught me, using his hands to cover the bullet wound on my stomach. He cried, repeatedly apologizing, begging me not to die. I smiled at him, slowly took out the crumpled pregnancy test report that I always carried with me. I softly said, "Steven, take a look, our child. It's such a pity, we may never see him." That night, I miscarried and bled heavily. Along with the gunshot wound, I almost died. The doctors pulled me back from the brink of death, and I lay on the bed for a long time, delaying the wedding. The person who injured me that night was reportedly seeking revenge on Vivien. Steven and I lived in a villa in the mountain, surrounded by walls with electric fencing. However, that night, a power outage due to heavy rain allowed that person to break in. Vivien said that the person was an enemy her father made after going bankrupt and engaging in fraud, with no connection to her. But that person's timing was too perfect. It was as if Vivien paid him to kill me. Vivien held my hand, crying profusely, apologizing to me. "I'm sorry, Joy, it's all my fault. If Steven had been more focused on protecting me and not forgotten about you, you wouldn't have been hurt." Steven coldly interrupted her. "Shut up, get out." Vivien stood up, looked back at him, biting her lip, and asked in a choked voice, "Are you asking me to leave, Steven? I have depression. Do you not care about me anymore?" Steven, with no expression on his face, walked out of the ward. He said to Vivien, "Come out, I have something to tell you." Vivien turned to me, raised her eyebrows teasingly, and said, "Joy, I'm sick. Steven definitely won't let me leave. Don't be angry with him. I'll come see you tomorrow." She rushed to find Steven, opening the door wide, making sure I overheard their conversation. After a moment, there was a sudden noise from outside. I slowly opened my eyes and saw Steven holding Vivien by the neck, pressing her against the wall. Steven's veins bulged on his arm, and I had never seen him so angry. He gritted his teeth, cursing Vivien. "How did that person get in? You should know better than anyone how." "Vivien, I wanted to help you out of our past friendship, but you've gone too far. Listen to me, for the rest of my life, for the next life, for the next life, I only love Joy. You wanted to die? Fine, I'll grant it for you." Vivien widened her eyes, tears streaming down, her face turning red. She gradually lost strength, grabbing onto Steven's trouser leg and shaking her head desperately. Someone glanced at Vivien, then asked Steven with his head bowed, "Steven, what do we do next?" Steven smiled, but there was a coldness in his eyes. He glanced at the person and asked back, "Vivien killed my child, almost killed my wife. What do you think we should do?" The person looking into the ward cautiously replied, "Let your wife recover from her illness, and then decide how to handle it. Listen to your wife." Steven pulled out a cigarette, biting down on it, not saying anything, tacitly agreeing. I knew that deep down, he couldn't bear to let Vivien really die. The fiery love of youth is imprinted in the heart for a lifetime. Luckily, I didn't care. After the incident, Steven stayed by my side every day. He treated me like I was delicate, being careful not to let me fall or break. But it wasn't enough. What I truly wanted from him, he had not given me yet. I couldn't directly ask for it. Steven would be suspicious. I needed to keep provoking him, making him angry, making him jealous, making him lose some of his sanity for me. Obediently following my words. On a normal morning, I decided to leave Steven. He prepared breakfast, carrying milk upstairs to wake me up, only to see that I had packed my bags. Steven's smile quickly faded, and he patiently asked me what I meant. I took off the engagement ring that Vivien had thrown away, and that Steven had painstakingly retrieved, placing it on the table. I said softly, "It means nothing, I just don't want you, and I don't want to get married anymore." Steven seemed to hear a joke, coldly curling his lips, placing the milk in front of me and ordering me to drink it. He lifted his other hand, gripping my nape tightly, smiling as he said, "I really like a saying, love and fight at the head of the bed, harmony at the foot. Joy, you need to behave, stop saying hurtful things, making me unable to resist wanting to mistreat you when you're upset." I pushed Steven away abruptly, and in the process, knocked over the milk cup he was holding. The glass shattered on the floor, but I paid it no mind, storming out. Seeing my foot cut from the glass, Stephen cursed under his breath, grabbing my waist and throwing me onto the bed. He held my neck firmly, threatening me savagely. "Joy, you're asking for it, aren't you?" I had explained countless times that night. I had only gone along with what Vivien was saying to keep her emotions stable. I had been humble and submissive for so long. When would your anger dissipate? "What do you want me to do to make you believe that I love you?" I looked at him, smiled, and calmly replied, "Stephen, it's okay, I really don't care about who you love. Actually, I've never truly loved you." It was as if someone had pressed the pause button on Stephen. He just stared at me intently, as if trying to see through me, to determine if what I had said was true or false. Suddenly, he buried his head in my neck, biting down with sharp teeth, almost piercing my veins. Like a wild beast marking his beloved. After a moment, Stephen whispered in my ear, cautioning me, "Joy, don't say hurtful things again. If you say you don't love me, I will be heartbroken. Remember, you promised to marry me, have children with me, give me a home." I felt touched and took it seriously. "If you dare to change your mind, I will really kill you." I stared at the blank ceiling, listening quietly to him speak. In the place where Stephen couldn't see, I smiled softly. "If I make a scene about leaving, Stephen would imprison me in the villa, not allowing me to go anywhere. He had someone bring Vivien in front of me, without saying a word, leaving me to handle it." Vivien looked a bit thinner and messier than before, probably not having had a comfortable time recently. But when she looked at me, it was the same as before, with jealousy and resentment in her eyes, wishing I were dead. I knew Stephen would not let her suffer. Those who have suffered are not like this. Stephen always has a soft spot for Vivien, creating a sliver of hope in her that they could reconcile. I coldly stood in front of Vivien, pulled out a gun, pressed it against her stomach, and whispered, "You owe me 2 shots. Give me one, and give one to my child." Vivien bit her lip, challenging me, "Joy, you don't dare shoot. You know, besides Stephen, no one dares to touch me." In the corner of my eye, Stephen lazily leaned back on the couch, quietly watching me, not saying a word. Normally at this moment, I should have been obedient, waiting for him to ask me if I dared to kill Vivien. But I didn't want to be obedient anymore. I was tired of pretending. Suddenly, I pulled the trigger, startling everyone. Even Stephen leaned forward, almost rushing over. But the gun didn't actually fire, because I didn't load any bullets. Vivien's face turned pale, the defiance in her eyes fading. She went to Stephen in tears, like a dog, kneeling in front of him, looking pitiful. I casually followed, stepping on Vivien's back, pushing her down in front of Stephen. I stared at her terrified face, and chuckled softly, saying, "Don't cry, right now. I didn't really want you dead, just teasing you. Seeing you so scared, I find you particularly amusing. I have to keep you close, for my entertainment. Vivien, from now on, you'll have to endure a shot from me every day. Maybe with bullets, maybe without, it all depends on my mood. To survive, you'll have to work harder to please me. In case I'm won over by you, perhaps I, like Stephen, won't bear to kill you." I raised my head, smiling, asking Stephen, "What do you think, okay?" While Vivien cried and begged Stephen, "Stephen, don't agree with her, don't agree with her, she's gone mad. I'm so scared, Stephen, you said you couldn't stand seeing me scared, you said you'd feel sorry. Do you really want to see me tortured to death by her?" Stephen raised an eyebrow lightly, indicating that he was going to speak up for Vivien. Before he could say anything, I gently touched my stomach, softly saying, "Stephen, I have borne so much pain for you before, honestly. I don't even know what pain is anymore. You can't bear to see Vivien suffer, so you want me to take a shot for her. I really can. I just feel sorry for that little one in my belly, who so dearly wants to call you daddy." Stephen's throat moved slightly, he cupped my face as if holding a precious treasure, gently caressing it. He coaxed me, saying, "Joy, as long as you're happy, if you want to kill someone, I'll nod in agreement." Vivien said I was crazy. It seemed like Stephen thought the same. He brought the best psychologist for me, saying that I was sick. I also felt a bit pathological recently, that kind of feeling where everything was progressing smoothly according to my plans. But I could feel that the strength supporting me and allowing me to live would collapse when all my desires were fulfilled. On nights when Stephen didn't come home, I took out the old photo I had secretly hidden and looked at it. The man in the photo only showed his back, but I never had the chance to press my face against his back and say, "I love you." Lately, a thought often crossed my mind, that once everything was settled, "Eric, I'll come find you, okay?" I hugged the photo, not knowing when I fell asleep. When I woke up, I found the photo missing from my embrace. Vivien was waiting by my bedside as I got up. She looked nervous and resentful, staring at me. I gestured as if holding a gun to her, squinting my eyes, and said softly, "Bang." Seeing her startle, I chuckled. Waving, I asked her to put breakfast and fruit on the bed, praising, "The grapes today are so fresh, Vivien, why don't you try some? Come on, open up." Vivien's hands clenched tightly. She squatted in front of the bed, obediently opening her mouth with her eyes closed. I tossed a green grape into her mouth smoothly. I asked her, "How is it? Tasty?" Vivien lowered her head, gritted her teeth, and said, "It's delicious." She suddenly smiled, seeming to think of something amusing. Lifting her head, with a mischievous look in her eyes, she said softly, "Joy, eat a little more. These delicious grapes, you may not get to eat them again in the future, right?" I raised an eyebrow, smiled, and remained silent. When Stephen came home, I was searching in the bedroom. He stood silently behind me, suddenly asking, "What are you looking for?" I stopped my movements and turned slowly, taking a deep breath, and rather perfunctorily replied, "Nothing." Stephen grabbed my arm and pulled me into his embrace. He stared into my eyes intensely, and after a moment, he chuckled self-deprecatingly, a bit angry and a bit sad, asking, "Joy, are you so lazy that you can't even bother to lie to me anymore?" He raised his hand, holding the photo I had discarded. The photo showed Eric about to leave, as I sat on the floor clinging to his leg, not wanting him to go, not wanting him to come to the North District as a mole. That year was the best youth of my life. That day, I should have fought desperately, not wanting him to leave. I never thought that once he left, he would never return. Eric's profession made it impractical for him to keep photos. And that one photo was our only memory. It was the day his comrade happened to be visiting and captured me throwing a tantrum, joking that I was a rascal. In truth, I really was a rascal. I grew up in a corrupt orphanage, unloved and unwanted, developing a host of bad habits. When I met Eric, I was only 16, just evicted from the orphanage and living as a drifter. That day, I stole an onigiri from a convenience store, nervously hiding in an alley, coincidentally encountering Eric there, smoking. That day, I had thought of dying, wanting to eat something good before I did. Those rice balls in the store, coated in meat juices, were a stolen pleasure to me. I hurriedly stuffed the rice ball into my mouth, nearly bursting it. Eric raised an eyebrow, looking at me strangely. I looked at him, crying and smiling, wanting to tell him how delicious the rice ball was, really, so delicious that he took a drag from his cigarette, squinted at me without acknowledging me, then turned and left, leaving behind a faint scent of mint. I thought he was disgusted by me. It didn't matter, many people found me disgusting. I sat against the wall, finishing the rice ball bit by bit. As I thought about where I should die so as not to scare anyone, someone placed a bag of food at my feet. I looked up to see the good-looking young man who was smoking there earlier. He said his name was Eric. He was my Eric. The sun shining behind him dazzled my eyes with its brightness. Eric squatted in front of me, extinguishing his cigarette butt, and asked, "Little rascal, what's your name?" I stared at him dazedly, softly saying, "I'm Joy." Joy. He didn't mind my filthiness, reached out to ruffle my hair, teasing me to smile. Joy. That day's Eric was an angel. I reached to grab my photo, but Stephen held it high above his head. He grabbed my neck, harshly asking me who the person in the photo was. His fingers nearly broke his teeth as he squeezed out the words, "Joy, are you two-timing me, falling in love with someone else behind my back?" I cried on one hand, coldly mocking and sneering at him on the other, saying, "Am I two-timing you? I've never loved you for real, I've said it before, I've never truly loved you." What? Is it only okay for you to have an unforgettable Vivien, and not for me to have someone unforgettable? I'll tell you the truth, being with you, I was just playing around, treating you as a pastime. You can't compare to the person I truly love, not even a bit. Stephen's fingers tightened gradually, making it hard for me to breathe. Still, I forced a smile and said, "Stephen, you better let me go, or kill me. Because I will never love you." Suddenly, Stephen laughed. He released his grip on my neck, pulling me tightly into his embrace, not allowing me to struggle. He whispered in my ear, scolding me, "Joy, stop talking nonsense. You cry for me, smile for me, even give up your life for me, and now, you say you don't love me? You don't love me, what the hell are you being cheap for? Joy, you're sick, I won't argue with you. But if you want to escape, it's impossible. In this life, you are mine to live, and even in death, you're my ghost." Stephen tore my photo into pieces, throwing them in my face. At that moment, his jealousy and anger reached its peak. Vivien kept knocking her head against the gun, rushed in, crying out, "Stephen, she admitted it, she loves someone else, why do you still want to keep her? You were so kind to her, why were you so cruel to me before? What am I to you? What am I? Joy, you go to hell. Stephen couldn't bear to kill you, I will." She raised a fruit knife in her hand and charged towards me. Stephen suddenly hugged me, and the knife stabbed into his shoulder. The stab completely ended Vivien's life. With a loud gunshot, without even turning his head, Stephen shot through her body. Vivien couldn't believe it, fell to the ground, crawling towards Stephen, leaving behind a long blood trail. Stephen didn't care about her anymore, just holding me, softly saying, "Joy, I will not be soft on Vivien anymore, okay? From now on, I will only cherish you, okay? I love you, and you must love me too." I collected all the fragments of the photo, took out transparent glue, trying to stick them together. Eric's back was shattered into pieces. I touched it repeatedly, tears falling down. I bit my lip, trying hard to endure the pain, telling myself, "Joy, don't cry." Eric said, "Joy, you have to smile." After that day, Stephen didn't come to see me for a long time. When he appeared again, he said he wanted to get married. He said the wedding would be in a chapel in the mountains, a place I really liked. He had mentioned before that he wanted to have the wedding there, but Stephen was unwilling, and the people below opposed it. That place was outside Stephen's sphere of influence. On the day of the wedding, all the top executives of the group would attend. It was a dangerous situation with everyone concentrated there. I never mentioned it again. To make me happy, Stephen was willing to take the risk. He sent people to the church in advance to check the terrain and arrange security measures. It was not easy to make Stephen relax his guard, and the most I could do was that on the day of the wedding, Stephen forced me to put on a wedding dress, hold a bouquet, and walk towards him step by step. The priest asked me if I was willing to marry Stephen. I remained silent with a cold face. Stephen's eyelashes drooped slightly. He smiled, a bit bitter in his smile. He reached out and held my face, gently kissed me, softly coaxing me, "Wife, say you agree, okay?" Before I could answer, several gunshots rang out. Someone shouted, "Damn it, cops, run!" The church was in chaos. A group of people rushed to protect Stephen, pushing me down. Stephen took out a gun, commanding others word by word, "Don't you King bother me, keep an eye on my wife." I was pulled along by people, fleeing together. The mountain terrain was complex, and I lost my shoes while running. My feet were bleeding, leaving a trail of blood behind me. Someone advised Stephen, "Stephen, you can't take your sister-in-law with you, her blood will expose our whereabouts." Stephen kicked him to the ground, squatted down, tore a strip of cloth from his clothes and wrapped it around my wound. He held me in his arms, comforting me nonstop. "Don't be afraid, Joy, don't be afraid, I won't leave you." Carrying me, he told the others, "We split up and leave, don't follow me to die." He was really a courageous person. I finally understood why Stephen's dark empire had been rooted in this land like a tumor for more than 10 years and could not be eradicated completely. He was too powerful, even with me as a burden, he could easily shake off the pursuing police. But I had waited for so long, just to be able to take them all down, just to take Stephen's life. How could I let him easily escape? Quietly, I undid the cloth around the wound, leaving specks of blood. It wasn't until Stephen took me to a deserted shack and saw the bandage that had been securely tied around my wound was gone that he furrowed his brow suddenly. At that moment, my heart rose to my throat. He was so clever, I was afraid he would discover I was an undercover agent and then shoot me dead. I wasn't afraid of death, I just couldn't die at his hands. That would be too humiliating. But it seemed Stephen didn't think too much, he just quietly rebandaged my wound. He said with concern, "Such a beautiful foot, might leave scars in the future." "I'm sorry, wife, are you scared?" Stephen had no strength left to run away, he could only hold me, softly saying, "It's all my fault. I hurt you so many times for Vivien in the past. It's a pity, we could have had children of our own. We could have been happy together for a lifetime." There was suddenly a noise outside, and the ones who arrived were 2 of Stephen's men. Stephen held too many powerful people in his hands. Those 2 men looked at me resentfully, then their eyes reddened, saying that this time the police blockade was too tight, they couldn't break through. Many of their brothers had already died. As they spoke, a group of police officers had already arrived. The 2 men stood guard outside, wanting Stephen to leave first. No, it's getting dark. If Steven leaves now, it'll be impossible to catch him next time. My hand quietly slipped into the thick hem of my skirt, holding a small knife against my leg. I drew the knife, quickly and fiercely, stabbing into Steven's abdomen. He was taking off his coat, worried I would be cold, and put it on me. Blood quickly stained his white shirt. He frowned, looked down at my hand holding the knife. Over the years, through life and death with Steven, he had never let me do anything involving bloodshed. My hands had always been clean, and Steven was the first person I killed. He looked up, suddenly smiled, and asked me, why? Fresh blood spread rapidly on his white shirt. He made no noise, didn't reach for his gun to end my life. He just gently held my hand, enduring the pain, and asked again, Joy, why? Tears streamed down my face. I asked Steven, do you remember Eric? You killed him, you killed the person I loved, and now you dare to ask me why? Steven pondered for a moment, nodded, as if understanding many things, said somewhat desolately, so, you came for that tough guy Eric. I envy him suddenly, having a good woman like you willing to die for him. But Joy, he's so foolish, he doesn't know how to cherish you. If I were him, if I had met you earlier, I would have lived a good life with you. What's the need for being an undercover, being in the black society, being Steven? Hearing him curse Eric, I rudely interrupted him, Steven, shut up. A forged pregnancy test could easily deceive you. How smart can you be? Steven didn't know, my love for him was false, my pregnancy was also false. I cried and laughed, while my men continued to exert pressure, my voice trembling, Steven, it's all a lie, everything, all lies to you. I waited for so long, you finally are dying. I wanted to see Steven collapse, to see his anger and regret after realizing he had trusted the wrong person. But he spat out a mouthful of blood, still smiling on his face. He reached up to touch my face, softly said, it's all my fault, besotted by lust, Joy, so many women flattered me, why did I fall in love with you? I deserved this. The police finally made a smart move, sending in men was futile, the undercover agents working under my nose, no one could escape my eyes. Except for you, Joy, encountering you, made me confused. He gently leaned his head on my shoulder, coughed twice, saying, it's so cold, Joy, don't push me away, okay? Joy, can you hug me? I had a cold face, pulled out the knife, once again, ruthlessly plunged it into his heart. The day Steven died, I fell into a coma for some reason. A string in my heart had broken, I felt so tired. In my dream, I went back to the place where I first met Eric. I crouched in a corner thinking secretly about how to die without scaring anyone. The handsome man who smoked and had saved me put 2 fingers against my lips, lifting them up a bit. He smiled and coaxed, Joy, smile.